Good morning. Welcome to Playing with Fire podcast. I'm your host, Bryan Spitulski. I'm an ex-firefighter and a current fire investigator, and I'm here again with Chuck Butler, my captain. So this is the second episode with Chuck, and I would encourage you, if you haven't already listened to the first episode, to go back and listen to the first one. It's on our website, and it should be listed on all of our social media. So good morning, sir. How are you?
Good to be back. I'm fine.
It's nice to have you back. The first one went really well.
Well, that's good to hear.
So this one, we're going to focus a little bit more on specific parts of PTSD. There's a lot of misunderstanding and maybe not proper recognition of PTSD, not only in the fire department, but all forms of first responders. I know when we were in the fire department, when I was in specifically, it wasn't that it wasn't spoke of or that it was frowned down upon. I think it was more there was still the man thing, I'm masculine. I shouldn't have emotions like this. I shouldn't be getting upset. That needs to kind of be looked at, because it's not that you're weak by having these events. It's that they're toxic and poison to keep in. And if you don't talk about them, they could progress into other more serious events.
I think in any industry, that's kind of a nature of that particular entity, is that you're going to have some things that affect you. Now, for me, there are a number of things that spark that. I mean, I can be driving down the road and I'll see a particular situation that reminds me of something that happened when I was in the department. And I guess we'll get into some of the incidents that I've gone into. And I've got some really
good
particular things that has happened to me recently.
Okay, so perfect segue. Let's go to while you're in the fire department. I know we've talked about a couple of them, one I was part of. And then after you give us maybe your first story, we'll bump on Antoine's really quick. And then tell us about some of the more recent stuff, because you don't have to be a firefighter or a first responder to have these types of incidents. No. What was the first one, or what was your most memorable one or haunting one?
It was in 1996. On Thanksgiving Day, I was driving for Captain Vince Basulto, and we got a call of a grandfather that had backed into his grandson. So we're going down the street, and the mother hears the fire truck, and she literally makes a dash toward us down the street. And I have to literally slow up to keep from hitting her. She opens my door, and she gets on the running board. She's trying to pull me out of the seat, screaming that her child needs help. I mean, it is a chaotic scene. And I just have enough time I'm holding her, keep her from falling off, to reach over and hit the air brake and stop it. And I'm probably a house short of where we're supposed to be. And she literally pulls me out of the engine, and we run up. Child is laying in the driveway. The grandfather is in so much shock. He's just sitting in the car. He never got out of the car. He's just sitting there staring forward. So I start, CPR, mouth to mouth, doing all the things on this 2-year-old baby that's laying in the driveway, and going at it. The ambulance comes up, and they're hooking everything up, and I'm still doing CPR. You know how you get focused in on doing all your checks, making sure you're doing everything right, and you almost find yourself outside of your body because you're just focused on that scene. And I didn't even hear the ambulance telling me we're going to call it. And I'm continuing to do everything that I'm supposed to be doing. And finally, I feel Vince putting his hands on my shoulder and saying, "Chuck, they're calling it."
Right.
And I kind of stood up, and with kind of a numb look on my face, and I start walking back to the engine. Vince goes, "No," says, we'll let Jose drive. You sit back there in the back." And so I sit in the back, and we drove back to the station. As soon as I get to the station, I want to be by myself. I go upstairs in old Station 2. I go up those spiral staircases, and I'm sitting up there just kind of in a daze, trying to grasp all this. And I sit up there. It seemed like it was just a few minutes, but from what I hear, it was about an hour or two. Next thing I hear is a bunch of ruckus downstairs. So I go downstairs, and it's my kids. Vince has called my wife to bring over my 2-year-old and my other son, and they're doing their stuff. They're jumping on things and everything. And immediately I see Brandon, and that's who I identified
Mm-hmm.
this kid with. Was my son, Brandon, because they're about the same age, same size. And he jumps up in my lap and he starts telling me all kinds of stuff. And,
Wow.
I thought that was really a good thing for Vince to have done. I mean, he didn't tell me he's going to call my wife,
Right.
but he calls her up, and the kids come over to kind of get me back focused. He took us out of service, and he even asked me if I wanted to go home, and I says, "No, I'm gonna hang here." And that was a really good forethought on his part.
Absolutely.
And I think about those same things when it was you and I and Antoine. I thought, maybe I could have done more, something along those lines.
Right.
But that's one that I drive down the road, and I did this the other day. I'm driving down the road, and I see a little kid run across the driveway, and
Trigger.
Do
you find yourself hearing the mom with her panic voice, or do you hear, a similar voice that triggers it, or something that brings you back besides a kid, or is it just basically seeing a child?
Basically just seeing a child,
Yeah.
running across a driveway, especially one that's small, and kind of reminds me of that situation.
Wow. Yeah. With me, it's bagpipes. I think we talked about that. Anything to do with a first responder funeral, the bagpipes, the marching, the salute, that kind of stuff just messes me up. So I wonder sometimes, are there certain specific triggers for people? Is it not just the visual thing, but a smell, something that brings it back too? So I don't know. I don't have that. And I was wondering if, because the mom was so close to, stopping you in the street basically, and you had to pause what you were doing just to secure her and then stop the vehicle. I would think there might be something else, but
I have dreams, and between the trigger of seeing a child, and then every so often I'll have a dream about something that we did in the fire department. I wonder, and I wake up, should I be somewhere? Am I missing something? And it just kind of goes from there. And I thought about all the things that we talked about in the last one. We're given our point of view on what I pretty much sure that is post-traumatic stress. Because from what I hear from some of my military friends, it sounds like the same thing, and they've been diagnosed. Maybe getting a professional talk about this here and see if what we're actually feeling is.
Yes.
I think it is, but I have yet to be diagnosed. I've been diagnosed for other things, but
right. That we'll focus on this right now.
We'll leave that alone.
So interesting enough, last night while I couldn't sleep, I went to a couple of different websites and pulled up the symptoms of PTSD. There's a survey that you can do. I know the Veterans Administration has one. The Mayo Clinic has one. If you go into the internet, just type in PTSD and it'll pull up a whole bunch of different things for you. There's a quiz you do, and there's 5 specific questions that they ask you, and then they rate you between a low risk and a moderate to high risk. I know for me, just on the one incident, the Antoine incident, I'm in a high risk. It says, what are the events do you have? Do you hear, do you wake up at night? Do you have anxiety? We'll include the list, or at least the link for the list on our website, but you should do that. Go into the VA one or the Mayo Clinic one and just respond. Okay. You've got it.
Yeah.
I'm not a professional. You've got it.
Yeah.
So, and that is an extremely thoughtful idea to bring in a professional. And we're setting that up to support what you and I are talking about. And that brings back something that maybe we could have a person literally talk to us while we're sitting. Maybe we do it online or something like that, so we can get 3 people in the studio. But that would be incredible, because you would have a professional basically listening to your story, diagnose what you've got for sure, and then giving suggestions on what you can do to lessen it. And I know what I read last night is time is the best thing, because as you go along and you continue to talk about it, it becomes less, is what they say. And I think what they're talking about is the serious triggers, the massive anxieties where you have to shut yourself down. For myself, when I have a trigger, I will usually either change the channel turn my vision, especially if my wife's watching while I'm watching and I start to get the watery eye, I'll look to the side where she doesn't see me looking, or I'll change the topic, whatever it is. So it doesn't take much once you start getting down that road to start having that emotional response to the memories. And I had a similar one, a 2-year-old that fell into a pond, and the mom and dad were there. The mom was a nurse and she locked up. She was frozen. This was while I was a volunteer with Ceres Fire Department. The house where the incident took place at was en route to the fire station. So I stopped there. I got there at the same time a police officer did, and we started CPR on that little girl. The dad had mowed the backyard, took the clippings out to the front to dump them in the street. When he came back, she was face down in the pond. And he was just freaking out, of course. Well, worked her all the way to the hospital, got a pulse back, and I called that a win. We were like, we saved a little girl.
Yeah.
So went home that night, came back the next day, and I was kind of like happy, showed up at the station, and one of the captains there was like, the dad came in and said that he was thankful, but then the mom came in and said they didn't save her. So we did this, this roller coaster. I got my goosebumps just now. So you go from a success, you think, we got my first one. I mean, that was my first actual CPR on a child too. And then to not have that and to actually go the opposite direction. That was a tough one. But when you start talking about 2-year-olds, I always think of a pond, and I had a couple of pools, but they were adults where we had the lady at the bottom of the pool and one. But a 2-year-old has a special place.
Oh yeah.
And it will pull it out from underneath you. Yeah. So yeah, those are tough. I don't have a trigger for that one other than maybe a certain type of a pond, which I have not hit on. And it's not until you said the 2-year-old that there was a problem, or that it hit me, that it was still kind of in me. I don't think that one is one that I have problems with like Antoine, but it's one that I can smell the lawn clippings. I can still remember the front steps where the dad had the little girl at and the mom just standing there. And like I said, she was a nurse. You would think that she would be the one doing it.
That's what you mean by the smell.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never had that. That's powerful.
It's interesting. Okay, so now we can go one that we've talked about, the Antoine one. The reason I want to bring Antoine back up is, one, I think he deserves to be recognized as much as we possibly can for how awesome of a person he was.
I agree.
Because he was truly a good guy. And the guilt that I have, and we talked about this in the last one, of not communicating with him enough, it makes me feel a little bit better to talk about it with you because we were there together. And when we ended last time, when we shut off the mics and we were done with it, you'd asked me, did you make the right choice? I think we were talking about the option of going, did you want to go? Or, you felt that maybe you made the wrong choice for not saying, we don't want to go. We know Ken, we're too close to him. We shouldn't go do this. You felt some guilt for that. And I said to you, I would have been more upset with you had we not gone. And that, I think that helped you a little bit.
Oh, it did.
That kind of communication, which what's it been? 22 years, 23 years? Well, it's been at least 23.
At least.
Because I think it was 02 when that happened.
Yeah.
April of 02. So we never really talked about it. After his funeral, I went to the hospital when he was in the hospital. And then his family came in. They spent time with him. And then I left, and that's when he passed away. The thought of Antoine having gone through all of that over the years, that's what I wish I had those years back, to be able to say, hey, let's go to lunch. Let's go do something. And that's my cross. And we talked about our crosses to carry. So, but you feeling better after our last one is what I was wanting to get at. I got a little sidetracked here. The talk, just talking, that was an accident. We just kind of spurted it out. I'm so glad that you put us into that.
Well, and thank you for that. Just like I said with Vince, he had that vision that I needed help, and he calls my wife.
Awesome.
I second guess myself about all of that. I really do appreciate the fact that you told me that you would have felt even more upset with me if I wouldn't have. I asked you guys, and you guys said, yeah, we want to go because we're going to do this for Ken. But the decision was mine and Dave Grant's. I was really kind of surprised that he actually called me and asked me if I wanted to do that, but that's another story.
Is that some PTSD there too?
Yeah, just saying his name.
I know Mr. Chief Grant. Yeah. I remember him well. Do you have any other ones that are fresh in your mind or that you recall that are painful?
Other than the Costin fire where Jim Adams fell
Mm,
through the garage, that one affects me because it's somebody that I'd see every day, one of our fellow firefighters. And I never really talked with my firefighters about that, Nate and Mike Peters, about how that affected them. They seem to have dealt with it the way we always deal with it.
right,
We'll set it aside. But we did have a little bit of counseling after that because it was such a horrific incident for the department as a whole.
right, right.
But other than those three, I think I've been fortunate in not have something that's so traumatic. And dealing with it, you're absolutely right. We want to keep this macho persona that nothing gets to us.
Right.
And that's probably even worse than someone who is really emotional about something because at least they get it out.
Exactly.
And those are things that needs to become on the forefront of the fire department.
Right. And that's exactly why I want to do this kind of interaction, because I think there's a lot of people that are still of the old mentality of swallow it, keep it in. That's the only way you can go to work the next day. And it's not to embarrass. It's not to degrade or make somebody feel less. It's actually the complete opposite, because keeping that stuck inside makes it happen like this 20 years down the road because you don't get rid of it. And the health conditions it has for some people, that it kind of makes them stress out. They get ulcers. It could get heart issues. I mean, there's a lot of things along with taking it out on family members or whatever else, you snap in a bar or whatever it is. That's what we got to avoid, or the suicides. As I was saying before, that in episode 1 or the first one, that there was very recently a captain who blew it off. Totally opposite of what Vince did for you. Go suck it up. And then that firefighter killed himself. And that shouldn't be happening today. And it's not to make anybody look bad or feel bad. It's to prevent that kind of scenario from happening.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
No,
there's no
absolutely
reason for
not.
it. That you don't have to be macho all the time when that kind of poison is inside of you. And this kind of interaction, I think, is the best way to tell people, look, there is a way to take care of this. It's okay to be upset, to get emotional, to talk it out, because I'm an ex-vet. I was in the Army for 8 years. So this was never talked to me. And even in going through EMT, going through the fire department, we kind of hit on it. And I know Modesto was attentive to it. But this one kind of slipped through just a little bit because it was only the three of us that were really involved. Like the garage with Adams. You had everybody out. I mean, it was a working structure. So you had a lot of people there. Did you guys go through a debrief? Did you guys talk about it?
We talked about it after the incident, right there on scene, and then I think about a day later, they broke us up into groups. They brought in a professional, and we talked about it in groups. They had run each engine company or truck company through, and we talked about it.
That's the way.
Which was really good.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the way it should be. When we were at lunch, we were talking about not just specifically having 3 guys in a group or whatever the engine company is talking. I think there needs to be the recognition that one person in that group may need some special talking or attention. You follow them a couple of weeks down the road, a month down the road, and you check in on each person again, not just have a 48-hour rest and then, hey, let's talk about it.
That's a good point.
Because with Antoine, there were continuing events.
It may affect one person more so than it does another.
Right.
That's a good point.
So maybe that's something that can come up out of this, is with counselors, they suggest not just a 1-time or a 2-time event, but maybe a checklist that once a month you check in on the person. Hey, how are you feeling about this? Alone, not in front of. If I was sitting in the day room, Station 3, the TV room, and a counselor came in and said, hey, how are you feeling about this? I'm fine.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Because you're there and Antoine's there.
Especially if you're around your buddies.
Exactly.
You're gonna, oh, yeah, there goes that facade.
Got to keep it up. This isn't bothering me. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Pull me in the app bay by myself. And you know what? I do wake up a couple times at night, or I feel really bad about it. And so maybe that type of thing needs to be something that's looked at. So you were talking about the garage fire with Adams falling through the roof. Kind of give me a little more in-depth discussion on that. How did that happen? Do you remember?
Looking back, there was a family that was living in this house, and they had lost a lot of their power to the house. They couldn't afford to have electricity, so they were using a generator in the garage to power a lot of their appliances. And the woman went out to fuel it and put gasoline in it, and she wasted it on the heated manifold, and that's what sparked the fire. Those garages in this particular area did not have sheetrock on the ceiling, so they were exposed rafters.
Mm-hmm.
So the fire immediately got to those rafters in a real quick manner. So by the time we got on scene and they were going to go on the roof, the impingement on those rafters had been substantial.
Right.
It was there for a while. And that led to, when they sounded the roof, it may have sounded stable, but when they put their extra weight on those rafters that had been impinged by that fire for, let's say, a minute, they gave way. Jim was the first one on the roof, and I think JD was next. And that's where he collapsed in both of those. And Greg was just about to step on the roof. And when they went down, and I was making a circle of the building, and I had just passed the ladder to see Greg going up, and then there was a huge flash. It looked like the sun had just popped up, and that was the roof collapsing. So I hurried back to my crew, and me and Nate Damiano geared up and went in. And as we went in front door and made the turn to the left and started going down through the kitchen, we could see a fireball coming directly at us, and it was JD. His turnouts were on fire.
Oh, wow.
So we grabbed him, took him out, stripped off his turnouts, and I can remember asking him. He was excited. I had to really just grab his face, and he was my former firefighter, and ask him where Jim was. And he told me he was on the BC corner. He had enough going for him to tell me exactly where he was. So when we went back in, we had another firefighter with us, and I don't remember who that was. But Nate and I both went in with an additional firefighter, and they immediately went to that area, and they found him. We had to do a search. I don't know if that would have been too much time, and he would have died in there, but he went directly to where JD had directed us, and they got him, and they took him out. From the time we had JD to the time we got to Jim, was a very short period of time, and it was probably because he was focused enough to tell us where Jim was.
And how was he when you got him out? Was he alert?
He was awake. He was in shock. It was a scene. It was a scene. You know, all firefighter activities had ceased, and everybody was just focused on what we could do for Jim.
They do the horns. They three horns and got everybody out.
Everybody down and out of the way, and all we had was the RIC team doing their thing, and everybody else was just mainly manning lines to make sure that the fire didn't resurface and trap us inside.
Okay. Wow. Curious of the turnouts, because we always had the best turnouts. We had the new Kevlar ones while I was there, those tannish ones, sand-colored ones. Were those what you guys were wearing, or were they the black ones?
No, we were wearing the newer
Carnegie
tan ones.
Yeah. And he did pretty good. I don't remember any of the story of where he was burned or anything, but I'm guessing he went back to work.
He came back to work a year or so later. But you know, those turnouts, anything will burn.
Yep.
I mean, it'll help you if you're in a heated room, but if you're directly impinged by flame, I don't think anything's going to help you. It's going to eventually give way.
Yep. Yeah, and I know that talking to a couple of the battalion chiefs with Modesto now, they're more attentive to their turnouts now than we were back then. I mean, they've got, you don't wash them in the washing machines anymore. You got extractors.
They got extractors.
You don't keep them in the rooms anymore. They're all out in the at bay, because we used to lay them next to our bunks.
Yes, we did.
You'd throw on your bottoms and out to the rig. So they're a lot more attentive. And I know we were on a 2-year cycle. I think you would replace the turnouts automatically at 2 years, or if
something
damaged.
Something like that. Yeah, you know, I hope the other aspect of this post-traumatic stress will evolve kind of like something like that.
Yep.
And that's the way we do it in the fire service. We see something and we've lived with this certain way of doing things, and then we see something that would tell us that's not quite the way we should be doing things. And then we evolve.
Right. Yep. I wish everything did that, evolved in a common sense kind of a way. I'll lead into that with some other stories down the road, that fires that continue to keep happening that we don't learn from. I mean, we've got these fires that take out whole communities. And I've had discussions with people about the fire service, the weak links of the fire department, and it's very difficult to make those adjustments, but we keep losing entire towns, the wildland urban interface, the wind events that are increasing. I mean, we've got to come up with some different stuff. So that's kind of what I was going at, is we need to think outside of the box like they do with, firefighter gear.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew that you'd have to change it out or have to wash it a certain way or whatever? So these are great topics we can go down. I've got one specific one I'd love to have you back for, the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco. I've researched it in depth, and I think it's hilarious in a way to talk about it, because the way that they tried to mitigate an event was destructive. It took out half the city, but we can talk about that another time. Thank you so much for listening. Chuck, thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Maybe you should put little co-host behind your name, and we can have you back on maybe a regular basis and drag you to start talking. Every time we talk, it's helpful. So thank you very much.
That's good.
Again, thank you all for listening. Remember to like, subscribe, whatever it is that you got to do. Look for some new ones. We've got some great stuff coming up. We've already talked about some things we may lead into. So see you on the next one.